Tonight on Special Assignment, following our expose in March this year on a sick inmate battling for his life inside Johannesburg Prison's Medium B section in an overcrowded cell. His family and lawyer loses contact with him and then learns of his death inside prison.
Hey, I don't know why they're treating prisoners like this, like they're treating prisoners like dogs. I don't know. I don't know, these people, they are not fair.
After years of complaining of a common ailment, Lungisa Jadula says he was at long last sent for treatment at Baragwanath Hospital. But following an invasive medical procedure without his prior knowledge, Lungisa was returned to prison, weaker, in pain, and now exposed to deadly infections. In a March interview with Special Assignment, prison authorities vowed to look into his case.
We will definitely look at least ensuring that inmates like him are accommodated in a single cell where possible.
But he remained in an overcrowded communal cell until his health deteriorated drastically. Despite several investigations into South Africa's shocking prison conditions and the new medical parole system, Special Assignment finds yet another family that says the prison system is broken, unsympathetic, and unable to care for the inmates who fall ill under its care. In March this year, we met Brenda at her modest flat in central Johannesburg. Brenda is not her real name. She spoke to us on condition that we conceal her identity. She feared victimization for speaking out against the ill treatment of her partner Lungisa, who is also the father of a 21-year-old son. At the time, he had been incarcerated in Johannesburg prison for 13 years.
He went to jail in 2005, 27th of July. That was Wednesday. He was healthy. There was no problem with him. The condition is very bad inside there. When he told me, he says, no, everything here is not right. He's sharing the cell with people.
How many people are in there?
I think maybe it's about 10. It's a lot of people because the others are sleeping on the floor, the others are sleeping on top.
In 2009, after 4 years in jail, Lungisa developed hemorrhoids or piles. It's common and easily treatable. He said his pleas for medical assistance fell on deaf ears.
Because they don't care. That is why. They don't care because he's a prisoner. That's why I decided to go to the family and discuss this matter and say you must take action. Otherwise, if we are sitting and folding our arms, there's nothing.
In March this year, we also met with OKEKE, the Johannesburg-based lawyer who had heard of Lungisa's battle for proper medical care in prison and decided to take on his case.
He was ignored. His rights were violated. They ignored him until his situation became very worse. And suddenly they want to do a fire brigade operation without his consent. They cut his colon. Now he has it externally, carrying his intestine in a sack.
About a year after he first complained, prison authorities sent Lungisa here to Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital for specialized care. Part of his colon was removed, which meant he had to live with a stoma and colostomy bag, which needed constant and proper sterile care. Without any explanation as to why they did the invasive operation, Lungisa said he was sent back to his communal cell, more vulnerable than ever. He knew his battle to stay uninfected and alive had only just begun.
Yes, he can die, my dear, because now he's exposed to the infections. And now that place is not a safe place, you see? And it's not a hygiene place, you see?
What further aggravated his struggle was the uphill battle he had to access his medical records from Baragwanath Hospital. In these court documents, the top management of Baragwanath Hospital admits that it cannot find Lungisa's medical records for his surgery from 2010. There seemed to be a critical breakdown between the hospital and the prison's medical staff, and Lungisa's life hung in the balance.
A record from the first day that gives us the history of the treatment. Yes. That may point out negligence on the part of the state. That is missing. we need those records. What happened in January 2010 is very fundamental to our case, without which the state might want to throw their arms in the air, we are not responsible, we are not negligent. No, that is not it.
At the time, we met with ADELE van der Walt, who specializes in cases of medical neglect and citizens' rights to access proper medical care. She says prisoners have the same rights as other citizens under South Africa's constitution.
He had to be isolated, he had to be on his own. This is a patient with extensive surgery that needed recovery, and obviously to stay in a small, confined environment with 22 other inmates is quite problematic.
Fighting off reinfections in an overcrowded cell, Lungisa applied several times to be moved to a single cell. These requests were always denied without explanation. We then approached the Department of Correctional Services about these allegations. In our interview at the time with Maria Mabena, the department's Deputy Commissioner of Healthcare, she undertook to relook into the matter.
That's a very fair request, and I appreciate the recommendation that I think we should consider. Within the overcrowding that is there, we will definitely look at least ensuring that inmates like him are accommodated in a single cell where possible.
But the family says what followed after Special Assignment's expose in March is shrouded in secrecy, confusion and a seeming lack of proper protocol. Lungisa knew his time was running out. Following our expose in March this year and seeing that his condition remained the same, he knew his fight with prison authorities to either be released on medical parole or at the very least be moved to a single cell to up his chances of survival was a losing battle. Lungisa completed several study courses inside jail and now pinned all his hope on his early release on normal parole and dreamt about life outside prison, for which he qualified for by 30 April, after spending the requested time behind bars. But in yet another ironic and tragic twist of events, the prison bureaucracy stood between him and his freedom.
The last time I saw him, that was on the 22nd of April. That was Sunday. He told me that he's going home. He told me before, but now because I had to bring her clothes so that when he's released, he must wear those clothes, not for the prison clothes. So now, that was my last time to see him and talk to him. On the 30th, that was early in the morning, the social worker in prison phoned me and he says, Jadula is lost. He doesn't know this address. I said to him, why? I don't believe that, because we were together going there in Soweto for more than 20 years.
Brenda insists that after providing the prison with 2 Johannesburg addresses for Lungisa's parole, she gave them a third alternative address in the Eastern Cape.
According to our records, this person is only registered as a friend. So perhaps we understand in our cultures that you may get, siblings or people part of different surnames and stuff. So we take into consideration that. But here in this instance, this person was only listed as a friend.
Will a friend not be able to sign? Will somebody not be?
Because you will need someone who's residing, who will reside with the parole, because that person must also, account, for that parole to say, is this person complying with the parole conditions? This is beside our officials having to go from time to time to check if, the person, is abiding by those conditions, or that person having to go and sign at our community corrections office for that.
What I don't understand is this couple was engaged, they had a 21-year-old son, they lived together prior to the inmate's incarceration, so one would expect that he would move back to their house where they lived before he was arrested.
But if that address was not listed there, then that would be a challenge. Or even when we request to say, give us an address, because we need to get an address, then we have to go and check and verify if indeed, the details are true, and if indeed, there is close relationship between the inmate and that particular family or that person who is receiving the parole.
But the prison authorities claim that Brenda appeared on their records as a friend of Lungisa, and therefore they could not confirm the parole details with her.
For confirmation, I always not admitted because of that. I have got sickness. So I said, no, he doesn't know this place. So I must give her the phone number from Eastern Cape, because now they are going to deport him to Eastern Cape. So that was the last time the social worker told me. On the 15th, that was Tuesday, during the day, it was 2:30. She also phoned me again and she said to me, they can't get hold of this address. They are struggling to get this address. I said to him, no, this address is in Eastern Cape. It's Kobo Kobo. The village is Kulu. So I don't know why you are lost, because there's no section there. First thing he asked me, which section? I said, no, there's no section. These are the rural areas. So there are no sections in rural areas.
The only alternative was to look at another address. And the only alternative address was in the Eastern Cape, that we could locate, and there were no contacts there, which made it difficult even, to contact, those people in the Eastern Cape.
She showed us records that she provided an address in Braamfontein, and then there were issues about the 7th floor in the building. Then she provided an address in Soweto, and then lastly she provided an address in the Eastern Cape. So there were 3 addresses provided.
But in our records, we only had the one address that was used by officials when an attempt was made to place the deceased on parole, and the one in the Eastern Cape. We don't have the other addresses. So it could be then a matter of checking again to say when were these provided, were they recorded, and all those matters.
Brenda and Lungisa believed that not only was his fundamental right to proper medical care violated, but his legal right to be released on normal parole were now also defied by the prison authorities.
The way I was, because now I don't know what's going on. I was so confused because I don't know what's going on, because I can't go, he can't phone me, I can't get hold of him. On Saturday the 19th, I go to prison as usual. I can't get hold of him. I was waiting for him about 6 or 7 hours, waiting for him. At last, one of the prisoners told me that this person you are looking for, he is in the hospital. He is lying critical, he is critically ill. He can't talk, he can't do anything. I go there inside the hospital.
Brenda, a nurse by profession, realized Lungisa was busy dying.
When I saw him, really, there's no oxygen, there's no drip, and you can see this person was ill for maybe for 2 weeks, and his eyes were closed, the mouth, you can see he is dehydrated. That means there's nothing, he can't get nothing, like medication, water. I didn't speak to him because he was closing his eyes, he was closing his mouth, he can't talk, he is difficulty breathing. I see him, he was dying, the way he was.
There is nothing in front of us which seemed to suggest that the deceased was not, afforded appropriate treatment. And there is nothing before us which seemed to suggest that there was negligence from our part. But if there are such allegations, they must be probed.
Brenda meets with Austin OKEKE, the lawyer who has been handling Lungisa's case over the past few months. The two have since learned that Lungisa had been taken to 2 different hospitals in the weeks leading up to his death.
I'm only waiting for the reports. It hasn't been explained to me. I have written a letter to the state attorney requesting a detailed report on what has happened to him, the circumstances surrounding his death, autopsy reports, and every information that I have asked for. I'm still expecting.
But Baragwanath Hospital and the Department of Correctional Services are refusing to divulge the reasons for his medical treatment.
Inmates will report in case they are not feeling well, but I cannot disclose the nature of the illness, due to the clause in the National Health Act.
Given his critical condition, why then was Lungisa discharged from Baragwanath Hospital and sent back here to Johannesburg Prison? And why did the medical staff at prison not refer him back to a public hospital once his health deteriorated?
Whenever an inmate needed to get the best possible care, measures were being provided. At no point an inmate was denied, access to health care. If he needed to be treated by a tertiary institution, that was done. So until then, such time that unfortunately the inmate, passed on.
But I think that's the point. He died in prison. He clearly had to get to an outside facility where he could get the necessary help.
Yeah, but then the question is, who then must make that determination? Because remember, we have those healthcare professionals inside correctional services, but they work in tandem with, with those centers outside that we've got relationships with. So if those centers feel that this inmate, can recuperate in a correctional facility, we have to take their word.
Even if you see he's busy dying?
As I'm saying, for us is to give that inmate the best care. So if that decision is made to say, I could be discharged today from a healthcare facility, and 3 hours later, I die, or I could be in a hospital facility and still die. So it's, I think for us as correctional services is to ensure that an inmate who's in need of healthcare treatment is provided with that.
Brenda is picking up the pieces after all their hopes were shattered to get a sick Lungisa released in time. The couple believed this was the only way to save him from a certain death awaiting him inside Johannesburg Prison's severely overcrowded Medium B section. Brenda shows us the numerous handwritten requests submitted to the Johannesburg Prison authorities since 2010, in which Lungisa pleaded to be moved to a single cell due to his difficulties in fighting off infections.
Is exposed to the infections, and now that place is not a safe place, you see, and it's not a hygiene place, you see, so it's a risk.
However, the Correctional Services Department spokesperson says there were medical reasons for this decision.
It was our commitment in the previous interview that we'll look into that possibility, but what transpired is that the deceased was epileptic. As a result, we couldn't move him into a single cell. And there were also other reasons which I will not be in a position to disclose due to the doctor-patient confidentiality. And as a department, we just had to ensure that he gets the best care in terms of access, to health care in a communal cell, and he was being monitored quite closely.
In its 2017 annual report, the Judicial Inspector General for Prisons highlighted the problem of overcrowding in the country's 236 prisons. There are not enough beds for over 37,000 inmates, and prisons in urban areas have higher rates of overcrowding, with Johannesburg Prison's Medium B section at 233% full.
The Judicial Inspectorate of Correctional Services annual reports, 2015-16, one of the biggest issues that continuously comes up, and if I may quote here, says the majority of complaints received relate to the provision of healthcare for inmates. They refer to the limited access to medical staff, especially after hours, and availability of medication and skin infections claimed to be contracted from other inmates or from unhygienic conditions in the prison. So, overcrowding.
The overcrowding, you know, there are medical conditions that can be prevented without medicine, like through bathing, fresh air, like medical skin conditions. And if the correctional facilities are congested, it's difficult to maintain acceptable standards of personal hygiene, where there's continued use of ablution facilities, hot water, maintaining the environment to be clean.
Ruth Hopkins works for the Wits Justice Project. The group monitors, investigates and reports on the gaps and failings within South Africa's criminal justice system. Ruth says in her dealings with inmates across the country, the lack of proper medical care inside our prisons remains a huge problem.
It's a very, very common issue that inmates write to us about. Inmates write to the Wits Justice Project, and a lot of them are about healthcare, about people who are not getting their HIV medication on time, people who are not getting their TB medication on time, like you said, expired medication. Prisoners in South Africa are often, the majority are poor and disenfranchised, and will actually have to bribe warders to even get to a doctor. So I think definitely in South Africa there's something you could call class justice. You know, I mean, if you have the money, you'll get better treatment.
Prisoners who fall ill behind bars and need specialized medical care seem to find themselves in the very vulnerable position of being dependent for treatment on two state institutions, the Departments of Health and Correctional Services, who battle with following protocol around communication.
There are some challenges at times with feedback to correctional services, where an inmate will be discharged and correctional services will not receive sometimes a report on what was done, what continued care should be provided. Our correctional services doctor usually holds meetings with a specific hospital to say, please, when inmates are released, can you please ensure that you issue the discharge letter, and if possible, can you also fax directly to my office to ensure that we do not miss anything between the public health facility and correctional services.
The new medical parole law was implemented in 2012 following the controversy surrounding Schabir Shaik, the then financial advisor of former President Jacob Zuma. In an interview with Special Assignment at the time, Criminologist MARAVANYIKA summed up the new legislation.
Essentially, the Department of Correctional Service was saying, this is not a place for you to die, so go home and die. Whereas with your amendment, they're now saying, this is not a place for you to live, go home and get better.
For hundreds of sick inmates like Lungiza Jadula, who did not qualify for medical parole despite 3 attempts and his deteriorating health, the new medical parole system is nothing more than lip service.
I wouldn't say that the system is not working, because a number of cases are brought before the Medical Parole Advisory Board. They will approve some, decline some, based on what is presented before them. They even go in terms of hospitals to check on those inmates who have applied for medical parole to really, convince themselves that, this is a terminal illness, this person stands no chance of surviving in a correctional facility. And those are specialists, they will make that determination.
The public perception remains that there's a stark contrast between the medical care given inside prisons to those who are wealthy and well-connected, compared to thousands of ordinary prisoners who remain ill.
I do think, purely based on the law, it's an improvement, because before it was only terminally ill inmates who could be released on medical parole, and that kind of scope now has been broadened to like chronic diseases. But I still think but it's kind of the underlying general problem in the South African correctional system is that disenfranchised poor people will often just be ignored. And so what you see a lot is that medical parole applications will be ignored or denied without providing many reasons.
The issue with medical parole is that that's just a law of general application. It's not specific to specific prisons. So each prison or correctional center again, will have to apply that law based on what is happening in there. It's easier to do so for the smaller institutions, much more difficult to do so for the bigger ones, particularly those that have problems of staffing. And if you do not have medical staff who can't, number one, screen, or who can't identify timeously, or even who can't provide medication. One of the biggest problems is even where people have been identified have got specific ailments, specific diseases, whether they're chronic or terminal, the issue has become providing them with the necessary medication and timeously.
Brenda says she will continue her legal fight to find justice for Lungisa Jadula.
We are responsible for is that because we want to know what happened. Because the last time I saw him, he was right. He was fine. Hey, I don't know why they're treating prisoners like this, like they're treating prisoners like dogs. I don't know. I don't know. These people, they are not fair. They are not fair. They are not fair.